All right, guys, what's up? This is Music, the Universal Language. This is going to be the 28th episode. And today I got hopefully soon to be playing drums with me, a special guest. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Dennis Lanpher. How's it going, man?
Great. How are you doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for being on. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
And so we kind of met randomly at one of the local bars in the area back when you could play music at bars. When was that? Middle of the winter? That wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, it was either winter or last fall. Definitely before this pandemic set in.
Yeah. And, you and your friend who runs sound basically ended up running sound for me because I had my little portable PA. And you're like, yeah, you guys are already plugged in, so it just made sense.
Yeah, we had set up for the act that was going to take place after you.
And then, we've been trying to plan. Well, you guys mentioned you play drums, he plays bass. So we've been trying to plan practice since then, but everything's changed since then. So it must have been not too long before the pandemic, before everything, I think.
Right. We were talking about getting a practice together sometime in March once I got back from the cruise that I took with my family.
That's right.
But then that's when they started shutting everything down, and it didn't make sense to get together then.
And the one gig in May is like rescheduled to October, so see if it even happens then. But
right
at this point, hoping for the best, but you never know.
Yeah, all right. Hopefully that August 23rd one is still on.
That one is, and I think most outdoor ones are pretty much still going, unless I don't know. I mean, things get crazier, but apparently Vermont's like the only place where cases are going down in the grand scheme of the country.
Yeah. From what I could see, it looks like the entire South and some of the West is
and it's places. Yeah, and it's places where they kind of didn't take it as seriously in a sense, so kind of makes sense. But anyways, that's another podcast. So, but let's get into your musical background as far back as you remember. So, have you always been a percussionist, or how far back?
Successfully, yes. I really started out as a child wanting to play fiddle.
Oh, cool.
And to the extent that my parents bought me a toy violin.
Nice.
And I would play around on it. Obviously, nobody in the family knew how to tune it. We just tightened strings and I ran a bow across it. But because of my handicap, I was not able to do any of the notes on the strings with the left hand on the fretboard.
So we got the bowing down good?
I got the bowing down and I did open note type stuff. Cool. No real playing, nothing that could be enjoyed or sung along with. And the reason I got interested in the violin was because my parents on Saturday nights would go to a square dance in the Waterville, Belvedere area.
Huh.
And the band that played there was a fiddle player, and he was always smiling from ear to ear whenever he played. And I would go sit up on the edge of the stage and just watch him play, and he'd look down at me and wink and smile and so on. And
they have a lot of fun, hopefully.
Yeah.
They should.
And so when that didn't work out, then I started watching the guitar player. Thought, guitar might be nice to play. So my folks bought me a toy guitar. Same problem, though. I could strum it and do strum patterns quite nicely, but I couldn't fret any of the chords, so that didn't work out too well.
So it's like.
And then eventually I took notice of the high school-aged female drummer in the band, and started watching her. And I started moving my hands and arms to the same patterns that she was doing with the hi-hat and snare drum, and I started tapping my foot to the same beats that I was seeing her foot do. And before I knew it, I was able to play, 4 on the floor, or bass drum on 1 and 3 and snare on 2 and 4 and eighth notes on the hi-hat.
Oh,
but
cool.
Since it was country music and square dance music, it was all like 6/8 shuffle.
The 2-step
instead of steady eights. Yeah.
Cool.
So
So how old were you when you first started going to these square dances, if you can remember?
I was probably 5, 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there.
And so it was just kind of like, instrument per year, and then you'd move on to the next, or was it this hard
I
to remember?
guess so. I don't know how long I was stuck on one instrument. My mother also had an upright piano in the house, and I used to go play on the upright piano. So I learned how to read a few of the notes and play simple tunes with just my right hand, and then I would throw in the bass single notes at that time with my left hand thumb. And so with two fingers, I could play some of the piano songs in the intro book that she had. I just was always very, very fascinated and interested in music. And
And
I would get to a certain point where this isn't working for me, let's find something else. And
right.
that's when I found that I could do everything this drummer was doing in the band. And she took notice and gave me a pair of her old drumsticks that had cracked that she had taped up with electrician tape. So I used to stick those up the sleeve of my left arm and take them with me to the dances. And when my parents weren't looking, I'd pull them out of my sleeve and sit there on stage and drum along. And
Okay,
before long, I was up there and I got to play the square dances. And
that's
she would
cool.
go and dance with her boyfriends in high school to the square dances, and then I would do the drumming of the square dances. And
No
then
way.
eventually she'd say, "Oh, I want to do a waltz or something with her boyfriend that she was dancing with." So they'd let me play the next song or two after the square dances. So I got to play probably 25, 30 minutes at a time. Then there'd be another 10 or 15 minutes of just country tunes that she played, and then there'd be a break. And then they'd go back, and it just was a 4-hour dance night where they did the same thing
Like,
every hour just by changing out songs.
and you're like 8 or 9 years old doing this? A
Um,
little older?
Probably
Just like
older than by then. I
10, 12?
probably was maybe 10, 12.
Well, you had gotten good at the drums at this point.
I had gotten to the point where I could do the things that she was doing on snare drum, and she wasn't just playing the typical boom cha boom cha boom cha rhythm on
Right.
these square dances. She was doing
Doing like the triplets and the.
yeah, it was more like marching type snare drumming,
Hmm.
like what you would hear the Islanders way, way back in the old days out of Canada do on some of their fiddle tunes. So the sticks were kind of playing along rat-a-tat-tat to the same rhythm that the fiddle player was playing. So I based a lot of my snare drum patterns on what the fiddle player was playing at the time. And then
That's
just
cool.
keeping the basic 4 on the floor with the bass drum going while I did that.
That actually makes a lot of sense because, yeah, especially that type of band, the fiddle player is very rhythmic. If
Yeah,
they're doing the double bow and keeping it going, then they do
right.
solos and whatnot, but the majority of the song, they're keeping the
Yeah.
rhythm just as much as
Yeah,
everybody else.
and it's very similar to like Sousa marches in terms of the 6/8 feel and the triplets and the little 5-stroke rolls or roughs or whatever you want to call them that you throw in there for embellishment.
I know some of those terms, but
Yeah.
so what was the band's name?
uh, well, that band started out being called Roland and the Happy Ramblers.
That's
And
cool.
Roland Pigeon was the fiddle player, and he lived in Westford, Vermont, and played fiddle for many, many, many years after that when he was done playing, in band gigs.
Right on.
And then I eventually ended up playing with that same band when I was in college. By that time, they had some different musicians in it, but it was still run by the same woman who played rhythm guitar and sang female vocals, and her husband had played lead guitar.
Oh,
And at that time, they called themselves Sackett Harbor Echoes.
okay, because Roland was doing something else and was
Roland had stopped playing fiddle with the band, and there was another fiddle player, I can't remember his name, that played with them. And Roland's wife in the Happy Ramblers band played stand-up bass. So then they had a different person playing bass. So basically, the bass player and the drummer were the two new, and the fiddle player were the new people in the band.
okay.
And
Cool.
so my first couple of years of college, I played with them. And at that time, they were playing very steady every Saturday night at the Cobweb in Georgia, Vermont.
Okay.
And then throughout the summers, they did a lot of weddings. And so we played afternoon weddings and then sometimes would pack up and then go to the Cobweb and at 8:30 start playing until
Mm,
12:30.
cool. So, so how long did you play with Roland, like that band? That
So
or
prior to it be when it was Rolling in the Happy Ramblers, it was only, when they invited me up on stage to do square dances.
was it almost like was it like throughout high school, or was it just kind of like when you were
Oh
younger?
yeah, it was throughout high school.
You keep going back, and they knew
Yeah,
you.
whenever my parents would go to the dance, I would go, and I would always bring a pair of drumsticks with me that fit my hands, and so that I could play on their drums. I
That's
couldn't
really
do much with the toms and crash cymbals because their drum set was set up in a manner that was difficult for me to hit them.
okay.
So when I play, I typically have to bring my own drums and play, or we end up spending a long time readjusting whatever the house
Yeah,
kit is or someone else's kit.
I mean it makes sense, and everybody's got their own, way of doing it and whatnot. But
Yeah.
that's really cool though that you saw them when you were young, and they kind of inspired you to play, and then you end up playing with them.
Yeah,
That's
quite frankly, if it hadn't
transition.
been for them bringing me up on stage and letting me do that, and for uh, Hubert's daughter, her name was Malo, the drummer, and if it hadn't been for her saying, look, he can do exactly what I'm doing, let him play square dances, and they agreed, I probably wouldn't be the drummer I am today. So I owe a lot of that to them.
That is cool. So did you stay in touch with her, or her and her husband?
So Joyce and Hubert, Joyce is still alive. Hubert has since passed. Roland Pigeon has since passed. But yeah, I stayed in touch with them even after college.
Cool.
Now and then, if they did a get together in Westford in Roland's garage just for some fun, I would take my drums over and set them up and play along with them.
Right on. So
Yeah,
do
it was
you
a lot
have
of fun.
any favorite like fiddle songs from back in the day that you just love playing with them? Any of the band?
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm really terrible at is song names. Um,
I'm kind of
you
like that.
know, so I
Like
don't know what the
artists.
favorite fiddle. I just don't know what the names of those fiddle tunes were really. I know one talked about uh, going down to Georgia, marching in Georgia, or something like that. Um, yeah, I just don't remember the names of the fiddle tunes. It was
Marching.
so long ago.
Yeah, right. No worries.
Nobody does square dances any longer unless they are the formal, line dance type square dancing. These were the round square dances that were done
Oh,
in like Uncle Wallace's barn in Waterville and stuff like that.
crazy. Cool.
But I didn't really start taking drum lessons or wanted to take any kind of music lessons until sixth grade.
Hmm.
And in sixth grade, I wanted to take drum lessons, and the music teacher said no. And his
What?
excuse, he said no. He said his excuse why I couldn't take snare drum lessons was that, well, he had two excuses. One was he had too many drummers already,
Hmm.
so he didn't want any more drummers. And the other was that the drumsticks were too big. I wouldn't be able to hold them. And so he brought in a pair of 5B marching drumsticks
Hmm.
and had me try to play with them, and I couldn't even do the drum rolls and the different
Oh,
things that I
because
had
they're
learned because they were too big and too heavy for my hands to hold.
right.
So I ended up taking bells, which is like like a xylophone type thing, only metal bars. It's called a
Yeah.
glockenspiel.
Yeah.
So I played that in sixth grade.
How many like is it one scale, or how many bells do you hit?
Well, it's not really a bell. It looks like a xylophone. It's got
Oh,
bars,
so it's
but
like
it's laid out.
yeah, okay, cool.
It's laid out like a piano.
I think
And
I know what you're talking about. It's just probably haven't seen something like that in so long.
yeah, yeah. The official name for it is glockenspiel. It's sometimes referred to as bell lyra. The marching one is a bell lyra,
Right.
and they just generically called them bells. And you played them with plastic mallets.
Cool.
And
So then
so I had those
and then
and
that's like
played
teaching you
those.
music, right? Teaching you
Yeah,
scales and all that, and
right. I got to read notes and rhythms playing the bells. My biggest problem was that because the pieces were so simple and I already knew how to read some notes and rhythms from what little I did with the piano, that I would go ahead and memorize my parts just because I like to play them. And
Huh.
so I kind of made it difficult for myself later on to learn how to sight read and play by looking at the music. To the extent that even
Oh,
today, when I'm playing the bells or a xylophone or a marimba or vibraphone or any of those mallet instruments, I have difficulty looking at the music and playing at the same time.
yeah, I
But
have to do.
when I finally hit 8th grade, though, I quit band
Random.
because the band teacher, the same one that taught me in 6th grade, would still not let me play drums. And we had a student teacher that year in 8th grade, and she was doing a drum class. So I quit junior high band and took her drum class
That's cool.
and learned how to play an official double stroke roll and learned
What's an
my
example of that?
rudiments and things like that.
What's an example of that? Is that like a rock and roll
It's
thing?
where you have 2 taps per stick.
Okay.
So it would be like
Okay.
right, right, left, left, right, right, left, left. And but they bounce with each stroke. And so it's referred to as a double stroke roll.
Cool.
The other roll that people do when they're not taught a rudimentary roll is what's called a buzz roll, where the stick bounces anywhere from 3 to 4 times or more when you press it down on the snare drum head. And when you
Huh.
do that rapidly, you get a roll that can sound pretty good, but it's not an official double stroke roll.
Huh. So this was like a class part of the school? It was like an independent thing.
It was something that the student teacher put on that
Okay, right. You said
took
cool.
place during one of the class periods during the same time that the junior high band was going. So I quit the junior high band in order to do her drum lesson thing. And then at the end of that year in 8th grade, she said I was good enough that I should play in the concert, and went and talked to the music teacher and convinced him to let me play in the 8th grade concert.
That is cool.
So
You
I
got
got to
back
play
at
then.
him. You're like,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, and then I said, I'll sign up for band as a 9th grader, but I want to play drums. And so he says, yeah, yeah, okay, you sign up. And I signed up, and then the first day he handed out all belt music and no drum music.
Well, it's like, why would you not let you decide what you want to play? That just doesn't make sense. But
Because back then he was the band leader and he decided who played what, and he had enough good drummers, so he didn't want any more. There was also, believe it or not, a certain amount of discrimination, I think, going on, because he really didn't believe that I could play drums all that well being physically handicapped.
right,
And
that sucks.
uh,
And within
so
the school
every year in
system,
high school, there are these music festivals that you can audition for and
yeah,
get placed into a band or a wind ensemble.
right.
And so that freshman year, I auditioned for the Newport Music Festival. I was too nervous to audition for the All-State Music Festival, but I did get into the wind ensemble, which was the highest band that they had up to Newport.
Cool.
They had a concert band, and then they had wind ensemble. And I was the last drummer picked for the wind ensemble. But the nice thing is I beat out all the other snare drummers at Lemuel Union High School at the time, and got into the wind ensemble. Some of the others got into the band. And then each
Okay.
year after that, I was able to stay in the wind ensemble. Until my senior year, I got first place in the wind ensemble, which meant I was the lead drummer and would get to play drum set or any of the fancy parts that would happen during the music. And
Okay.
that's when I got to meet my next sort of discriminatory person, the conductor that was invited in to conduct the band that year. Decided I couldn't hit the drums hard enough for his band to be loud enough. So he wanted me to not play the drum set part and wanted one of the other drummers to play it,
Oh
which
God.
was an absolute no-no to do, because whoever got first place in the audition got to do those more prestigious parts.
Right.
And I was pretty upset because, again, it felt like somebody was telling me again that because of my handicap, I can't do something. But there were a bunch of teachers in the area that stood up for me. They weren't from my high school, but they were from other area schools, and they went and they told this conductor he couldn't do that, that I had earned the part. And when he said that I wasn't playing loud enough, they informed him to just have the band play quieter. So he was forced into it by the people who were running the festival to continue to allow me to play the drum set.
That's cool.
So, you know, that gives you kind of a nice positive feeling that there are people out there looking out for you and trying to make it fair in your life. But there's always still those out there that are willing to take a look at someone and say he can't do that, or he's not playing loud enough, or something like that.
Do you think that's kind of like motivated you to prove them wrong, or just to
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons. Yeah, I mean, the reason, well, the other thing that happened in my freshman year when I told the teacher in high school that I wanted to audition, he said, okay. He really didn't think I'd make it. And then the night before, we had to stay after school and play our audition pieces for him. And I was so nervous playing it in front of him that I flubbed it up. And of course, the drummer next to him that was his favorite could play the thing perfectly. But he didn't play it perfectly for the audition, and I beat him in the audition. But he took me aside and mentioning, you know, making me want to do things that people say you can't. He took me aside, put his arm around my shoulder, and basically said, you know, I always have this policy that when people sign up to audition, that once you sign up, you have to go, whether you're prepared or not, because it just makes us look bad to have 30, 40 students sign up for an audition and only 10 go.
Right.
But he said, you know, I'll make an exception this time if you're uncomfortable and don't really want to go on audition. And the message to me was he's making the exception because I'm handicapped, not because I'm not prepared. So I went home. I was really upset and angry about it. I told my mother what happened. And I said, I know you don't want me to drum way into the night, but I'm going to drum all night long until I get this thing to be as perfect as I can and as fast as I can. So I stayed up until 11 o'clock at night after school, drumming my rudiments, drumming the audition piece, getting it better and better and better. And then I got on the bus that next day with him being surprised and went to the audition. So I did kind of prove him wrong.
Right. That's cool.
So I felt good about that. My mother talked to him later in the year at the end of the year concert. You know, he was a cool enough guy. He came up to her and he said, you know, I was really wrong about your son. He did a great job at the audition. He did a good job at the festival, and he does a good job here in band. And so my mother accepted his apologies and stuff like that and said, but you know, he still wants to play drums in your band, and you keep wanting him to play bells.
It's like you still haven't changed, even though you acknowledge.
No, we still had that struggle for the next 3 years in high school. But I did get to play in the jazz band.
I was going to say, it was the jazz band. That's all. You can always, you know, more drums there.
Yeah, well, he had 2 or 3 drummers that would play in the jazz band, and we took turns.
Rotate, okay.
Different pieces.
Cool.
So I got to play on the quieter pieces that weren't too fast or heavy hitting. So I got to learn the bossa nova rhythm and things like that are stylistic for jazz, and did that. So I found ways of forcing myself into things so that I could get to play.
Cool.
Which
right on.
It's kind of been what I've had to do throughout life.
Right. Well, you know, it makes you stronger, I would think, in the end, you know. It's more motivation.
Yeah.
Fuel.
Yeah. You know, you let yourself get bummed out a little bit, and you do a little bit of self-pity, and then you say, look, that's ridiculous. You love playing drums, just get out there and do it.
Right. Well, and that's a wise way to look at it, because some people dwell on the pity and then they never get back to the ambition or the motivation, you know. So.
Yeah. When I was 14 years old, I had done enough selling of Christmas cards for a few years that I made about $125.
Nice.
And I took that $125, went to a music store that had a used drum set for sale for about $125, and bought the drum set. It didn't come with any cymbals, and I was so sad that the guy went to his back room and found a junky pair of hi-hat cymbals and an old beaten up hi-hat stand and said, "Here, take this. It isn't very musical, but it'll serve the purpose."
Nice.
And
Something to practice on, right?
so I set it up, and eventually sometime in high school, I forget when, I went and bought a nice pair of Zildjian new beat hi-hat cymbals that I still use to this day to replace the cheap ones on that hi-hat stand. But I would just have my drums set up in the bedroom, and when I'd get my homework done at night, I would just go in and turn on the record player and play along to all the records.
Nice.
And that's how I learned to play other rhythms that I wasn't, seeing or hearing at the square dances.
Right. So was that kind of like rock and roll or jazz?
A little bit. My parents were really hardcore into country, so there was very little rock that was ever played in the house. Since Elvis Presley was also somewhat country,
Oh, okay.
and there was that Aloha from Hawaii concert that he did that was televised on TV, and I got to see that.
That was
And
in
saw,
that was in color, right?
yeah,
I think I know what you're talking about.
yeah.
Enough old
And
Elvis.
I got to see Ronnie Tutt, which was his drummer at the time, play across this big, huge drum set with probably 8 or 9 different toms and 2 bass drums. And it was just amazing watching him play on that stage and stuff. And so then I started buying Elvis records and listening to those and drumming along with them.
Cool.
And then I went to my cousin's house one weekend, and they were playing this music. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it was fantastic, and I loved what the drummer was doing. And it turned out to be the Eagles, the Hotel California album.
Oh, when he's singing and playing at the same time.
Yeah, so I went off and bought that album, and I played that one to the point that it just skipped and scratched like crazy, but I would drum along to those songs.
Well, and that song specifically has that like reggae beat.
Yeah,
In a
yeah.
sense.
But there was a lot of, instead of the bass drum on 1, 2, 3, 4, or 1 and 3, there was a lot of boom, 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 cha, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
cha.
Well,
Or they would turn it around, and it would be on 3 and
well,
1 and.
Well, and similar to Elvis, they could do the country thing too. With
Right.
What's his name?
Yeah, it was very much related.
Right now. When
Yeah, it was so related to country that it wasn't much that I had to do to learn this new stuff that I was hearing. But I love the fact that the toms were these nice, simple rhythms. He wasn't going really fast and wild and crazy on the toms when he would do a drum fill. It was stuff that I could actually play. So it was nice.
Huh. That's cool. So you said you continued the square dance band into college, or on occasion you said. Did you continue playing drums for school in college?
Yeah, so I majored in music ed at Johnson State College, and
nice.
I auditioned for both UVM and Johnson. I got into both, but I really liked the Johnson atmosphere and the country college campus on the hill a lot better than the city campus in Burlington.
Right.
And I also felt like the fewer students, I would have some kind of chance, whereas if I was one in hundreds, that I wouldn't have much of any chance at all.
Makes sense.
So, and also Johnson was 15 minutes away from home. So if I wanted to go home for the weekend or something, it was a lot easier to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but yeah, I majored in music. The head of the music department at that time was Albert Swinkowski, and he was more than willing to allow me to do a music program and to do what I could do with my handicap, and they would find some way around the stuff that I couldn't do with my handicap. So, for example, I can't play the woodwind instruments, but I can learn the fingerings and I can play them open, without any fingering. So I had to get
Right.
the embouchure down for every instrument, including the brass and all that. And I had to be able to memorize the fingerings, even though I couldn't play them.
Huh.
And then I did student teaching in music under the direction of Larry Solt, who was the Stowe High School music teacher at that time, back in the early 80s. So, but I also had people telling me that, you'll never make it in music. You can't make a living off music and stuff like that. You need a real job type thing for stability and
I've heard that
income.
before.
So,
Yeah.
so I majored in math as well, and as
Oh.
well as the music ed. And I found that it was easier to teach math because there wasn't a million different fingerings you had to memorize and not be able to use yourself. So I became a math teacher for about 5 years in Ipswich, Massachusetts, and then another 6 here in Vermont with part-time jobs. And
Huh.
I also taught math at the Community College of Vermont, both in St. Albans and Morrisville.
Cool. Well, math
But
and music go hand in hand, right?
yeah, they do. I mean, they're very much, you can't really play an instrument if you're not understanding subdivisions and rhythms, which are
Skill.
just merely fractions in math. So
Well, and they say, yeah, kids who learn music young do very good in math later.
yeah,
It's all patterns. It's all, you know, it
yeah,
has to mathematically work, I suppose. Even though I don't like to think about it that way, but it does make sense that way.
yeah.
Okay, so were you kind of like just drumming on occasion, being a teacher, or was it like hard to keep it
So
alive?
yeah, I was more drumming on occasion. When I was in college, I did a lot of drumming uh, because I played for a couple of years in that country band every Saturday night. And in the summer, we did weddings. And that only lasted for 2, 3 years. And then they ended up ending the band and retiring and selling their stuff.
Hmm.
Um, I also, during the same time period, played in another band, and it was punk music, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. So
80s. 80s
yeah,
punk.
so it was in the early 80s. I think it was, yeah, it was either, it must have been summer or fall of 79. Um,
What?
because I also had a summer job at Johnson State College, so I was already familiar with the campus.
You
And
That's
the
like when a lot of it was like brand new. If it was
it
punk.
was brand new, yeah. And I had never heard this music before. And there was a lot of music from European countries and stuff
So was
that
it like the Sex Pistols or the Clash? Like who was it?
the Clash, the Who, the Sex Pistols.
Who, right?
What was the band? Maybe it was
Crass or Black
they did
Flag?
a song called Surrender. Was that the Clash?
Uh, I'd have to hear the song.
Yeah. Anyways, it was one of my favorite songs. But we did a lot of stuff
Yeah,
that,
it could be the Clash.
yeah, I think it was. They did Surrender, and then the Police. I was
Mm,
blown away listening to the Police because I had learned that the bass drum belonged on beats 1 and 3, and the snare drum belonged on beats 2 and 4. And Stuart Copeland was doing just the opposite. He was putting the snare drum on beats 1 and 3, and the bass drum a lot of the time was on 2 and 4. And it was like, really? What's this guy doing? But it sounded so good that way. So I was trying to play along to a lot of the Police songs.
when they were diverse, they go back and forth. Like they almost had the reggae, then they had the punk, and then
Yeah.
it's kind of funky almost. I guess it was
Yeah.
part of the era. But yeah.
So that's the kind of music that my mother and my father would have just looked at and probably rolled their eyes and walked away because it was so incomprehensible to them.
Right.
But I just found it so exciting. And I remember there was a band, I really didn't like the band as a band all that much, but I loved the simplicity of the music and the
Mm.
energy. They were called the Ramones.
Oh, okay. Yeah, of
And
course.
I liked the songs because they were kind of melodic and easy to remember. And so we did a few Ramones numbers as well in that punk rock band. And
Yeah, they made like simplicity sound good in a sense.
yeah, Yeah, and being physically handicapped, I can do rhythms really, really well and keep them going for quite a long time, as long as you don't expect a lot of lightning fast speed drum solo,
crazy
toms
films.
being hit rapidly, that kind of stuff. And punk never did that.
That's almost like reserved for like metal or like hard rock.
Right. Yeah, I couldn't do metal. I would not be able to do the Nirvana stuff or the what's that one that
It's like Metallica or Slayer.
what's his name was the drummer in Nirvana, and then he was
Foo Fighters. Yeah.
Foo Fighters. Yeah, I couldn't play that stuff in a million years. It's just way too fast on all the drums at once.
Right. One and even punk in its beginnings was that much simpler, but I mean the Who, they were all over the place too, but
yeah,
they didn't stay too punk, I guess.
Yeah, I mean I can do a little of that for a short period of time, like at the tail end of a song.
Yeah.
Because when I do stuff fast, I literally, because my arms are stiff and I can't bend wrist that much and I can't do much with my elbows, I have to shake them up and down rapidly. And to do something really, really fast, I end up shaking in my shoulders and letting it go down to my hands. So that gets really tiring really quickly if you have to
working out these muscles. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, when we ever get together to practice your songs, I'll show you what I'm talking about. But
we need to figure that out.
Yeah,
things are coming up quick there, but we'll figure something.
Yeah,
out. Somewhere outside, sure. And maybe even set up the PA we're gonna use or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So
but so I was I could play Wipeout. That was about the fastest thing I could do. That was all 16th notes. And then that would go on for a while, and then it would go to regular pattern. And then after the regular pattern, it would go back to that floor tom 16th type stuff. And so I got it worked up that I could do that. But I was really, very, very tired after playing that song. So we would usually leave that to like the third or fourth set once we got toward the end of the night, so I didn't wear myself out too early.
And you kind of loosened up more, and
you're
having more fun, hopefully.
Yeah, but I don't play Wipeout any longer. I'm too old for that.
All right. So, when did you start drumming like consistently again after like you were teaching, and then did it become a thing?
So
not till like more with your daughter, or
it's a little bit before then. Back in '97, I had moved back to Vermont I guess it was I moved back to Vermont in '95, I think. No, 1990. And Ilaria was born, my oldest daughter, in 1990. I did town band and things like that for a little while. And then in 1997, I decided I really wanted to get back into drumming a little bit more. And I was going to start auditioning for country bands and get into a country band and play full time like I did when I was in college. That was the goal. That's what I wanted to do.
Right on.
So I went and bought what I would consider more of a professional set of drums. The first set of drums that I bought was made out of some kind of very cheap plywood. The heads were old. The shells didn't have much of any resonance. And I'd have to hit as hard as I could to get any kind of volume out of them or mic them up. And even back in the late 90s, most of the bands weren't miking drums all that much because most drummers were heavy enough hitters that they didn't need to.
Yeah, exactly.
So I bought a brand new drum set and one that sounds really, really good that I still have and use today. It's not a high-end $6,000 drum set, but it was more like a $1,500 drum set that I got for 50% off. The place I was buying it from had to get rid of all of their Premier drum kits because another music store in the area was selling Premier and they had the territorial license to do that.
Yeah.
So his last kit was what I bought for around $750.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I got it almost 50% off. And I
Nice.
wasn't looking for a brand new kit. I just wanted a used, good quality kit that I could play on. But this one had tom mounts that were far more flexible so that I could get the toms closer together and closer to me.
Huh.
And the drummer that was selling it to me, he had a drum shop in his garage in Waterbury, Vermont at the time. And he basically convinced me that it was a worthy investment. Instead of paying $300 and $350 for a used kit that I couldn't adjust much to fit me comfortably, I should get the one that would fit me comfortably. So I splurged and put it on the credit card and bought it, and then started auditioning.
Hmm.
And the first couple of auditions didn't go so well because, again, they would find out that I was physically handicapped, and they right away decided I wasn't going to be able to play. So,
Like, I got years of experience here.
yeah, so here it is, 1997, and I'm still got people looking at me and saying, because you've got crooked, stiff arms, you're not going to be able to play, and so we're not really looking for you to come play or something. They'd come up with an excuse.
Well, so wait, and at this point, you've been playing for how long? 20, 30 years?
I started playing really well when I was 14 years old because I bought that drum set when I was 14.
Right.
I went to a Belvedere at Old Home Day talent show. There was another band of all acoustic instruments that played at the talent show, and I learned they were doing the square dance that night. And I saw they didn't have a drummer, so I went up to them. I said, I noticed you didn't have a drummer in the talent show. Do you have a drummer for the dance tonight? And they said, no. And I said, oh, that's too bad. I said, most of the square dances that we attend, the bands all have drummers.
Right.
And they said, well, we don't. And I said, well, I'm a drummer, and I know this stuff. I'll come and play for you. And so they said, initially they said no, and I don't, I was 14 years old and I wasn't used to getting too much pushback. And, I was bolder and braver at 14 than I probably am now as an adult.
Right. Yeah, you would think.
And so they got to the point where they were too uncomfortable to say no. So they said, okay, bring your drums and early enough to set them up and you can play the first set. And if it goes well, then you can play the rest of the night. If it doesn't go well, we're going to ask you to just tear the set down at the end of the night and stuff like that. And I said, okay, that's fine. And I ended up playing the whole night, which was a blast.
That's
the
awesome.
only thing I found was I was first introduced to what musicians are like when they get drunk drinking beer, because they had drunk so much beer and gotten so tipsy that they were having trouble with the tempos of the songs. And I was really having a hard time keeping to their tempo, and they had a hard time keeping to my tempo. So the tempos varied a lot, but they were just having a lot of fun, and the people on the dance floor were having a lot of fun. And it was my first real gig of playing drums with a band, and I was having a blast.
Wait, so fast forward to 97. How old are you then? If you don't mind saying. This is
I was born in 61, so 91 would have been
36?
What, 30? It is. Yeah, I've been about 36.
So 22 years later, there's people are still doubting you.
Yeah.
And you're like, listen, man, I played a square dance 22 years ago. Come on. Give me a break.
I mean, you haven't even heard me play yet or see me play, and at least you're giving me a chance. And
well, I wouldn't think.
That's not usually what
I've met a lot of musicians.
So,
I've played with a lot of musicians. So I just feel like you wouldn't be as confident, or especially like, I mean, you have Gordon almost as your, I don't know, another confirming that you guys are like a duo in a sense.
Well,
and then I checked out your band, obviously. I checked out your daughter's band, so it was like, obviously,
right.
Play.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so the Maple Creek band started after I finally did in 1997 get a job drumming with a band.
Okay.
They were called Classic Country. They were from that town up near the Canadian border, Richford. So I would drive from Colchester after work all the way to Richford, Vermont,
Mm.
and it took about an hour. We'd have practices. The way I got that gig was I made no mention to them about my being physically handicapped. I said I would be bringing my own drums and that I really had to play my own drums. It was just a thing with me needing to play my own drums, and didn't give them any clues about my being handicapped. I arrived in the dooryard, started taking things out, and they saw me. They were uncomfortable to say anything, so they let me set everything up. And then we practiced, and at the end of the practice, they hired me and said, "Yeah, we want you to keep playing with us."
Right
And
up.
then, yep, and the bass player who was the band leader, in whose house we practiced in, I would hang out there late at night, and we'd have lots of conversations. And eventually, when we became friends enough that he admitted to me that that first day being there, he thought it was just going to be a waste of time until he heard me play. And then once he heard me play, he decided that it really wasn't right to prejudge people.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I got a mosquito in here.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate that it comes to that, because like the least you can do is listen to you first. You know, I mean, I guess it's true. I haven't listened to you live yet, but you know, I checked out some of your stuff, and I believe you that you've been playing since you're 14 and with live bands. I mean, how much experience do you need? You know, so
yeah, and you know, I continue to play with town bands like the Fairfax, Fletcher, Westford Town Band. I play at the Johnson State College, which I guess is now called Northern Vermont University College Community Band. I've been doing that ever since Ilaria was a student there in college.
all right.
So that's probably been 10 years of playing there with them. So I read music. I played with the Vermont Philharmonic Orchestra as well for a few years.
Okay, cool.
So I've played. There's never been any one band that's been super steady for a long time, with the exception of maybe the Maple Creek Band.
That's a family band in a sense.
That was the family band. It basically started with some musicians in classic country because the bass player ended up retiring, and he wanted to keep the name. So we changed the name of the band to the Maple Creek Band, and within 6 months, the lead guitar player and the fiddle player, they dropped out of the band because at that time we were having practices in my house, and they didn't want to drive an hour on Friday nights for practices.
Huh.
And we weren't getting many gigs at the time, so they decided to quit. I got different musicians, and that's when I met Gordy, because the rhythm guitar player, his name was Bruce Parker out of Essex Junction. He knew Gordy and another guy by the name of Ed Burley that played lead guitar. So he got those two players, himself and I, and we started playing out. And we played American Legions, VFWs, the fairs, stuff like that. And then eventually Ed Bruley left the band. Bruce Parker left the band. He had promised only to be in the band for 3 years, and he stayed in it way longer, like 7 or 8 years.
Oh, so this has been going on how long? So when did Maple Creek start? Like when was
in the early 2000s?
Okay, cool.
And then when my daughter Ilaria turned 16, we gave her a guitar, and she took guitar lessons from a teacher and got good enough that she could play rhythm guitar and sing. And she had learned how to do harmonies. And once she discovered how to sing harmony, you couldn't stop her singing harmony. She sang harmony on everything. So every one of the songs that we were doing, she had a harmony line figured out.
That's cool.
So she started attending our practices when she was 15 or 16. And we did a New Year's gig in Barry, Vermont. I think it was the American Legion down in Barry. And
I played there.
and the New Year's gigs were two gigs really. There was New Year's night, and then New Year's Day we went back at 4 o'clock and did another show for
Oh,
people for their
cool.
dinner.
Right on.
And so that was her first paid gig, was when she was 16.
That's cool.
And she had learned every song on rhythm guitar, and she had learned to harmonize on every song. And we allowed her to sing some of her own songs as lead singer.
That's cool,
And
man.
that's when I noticed that the band took on a totally different dynamic, because people stopped what they were doing, they stopped talking, they stopped eating, and they stared at the stage while she was singing.
And these are
And,
original stuff.
yeah. And that's when I said, okay, we have to make her full-time in the band, and we have to shift more of the songs to her singing lead.
Not just harmony.
Not just harmony. Although she liked singing harmony better.
She can harmonize herself on a recording, right?
Yeah. And then eventually, Bruce had decided he had been in the band long enough and he was having some health issues, so he wanted me to get a replacement. And that's when I asked Aaron Doan to join the band. And he was a college student along with Ilaria, and I'd gone to his senior recital and heard him play rhythm guitar and sing Brooks and Dunn songs. And his vocals and his singing just blew me away.
Right.
So when he had finished his semester of student teaching, I sent him a message and said, how would you like to join the Maple Creek Band and play rhythm guitar and sing? And he accepted, and so he played with us for a lot of years. So then it was Aaron, Ilaria, myself, and at that time, Gordy had left the band because he had injured his wrist and couldn't play any longer, and was living in Pennsylvania. And we tried out lots of bass players, and it was really hard to get a bass player that wasn't already booked into 3 other bands to play with us. So we tried a couple bass players. They really didn't work out very well. And one day I made a comment, gee, wouldn't it be nice if Gordy was back in the area so he could play for us again? And my other daughter, Crystal, bet us that she could find out where he was on Facebook, and within 3 minutes, she found him on Facebook.
Of course.
And I had tried finding him on Facebook and wasn't successful at all, but my daughter could find him. So he didn't really look like himself. He had long hair down to his hips, and he was playing in rock and roll bands in Pennsylvania. So I started communicating with him, and he had pretty much been dumped by the band he was playing in. They had decided they wanted to play a different style of music than what Gordy was playing. And they also decided that they didn't want to go as pro and take it as seriously as Gordy wanted them to do. So they went on without him. And at that point I said, you know, you don't have any band down there right now. If you don't have any other reason to live in Pennsylvania, why don't you come back to Vermont and play in our band? So he agreed to move back to Vermont and play in our band. And so
cool.
he's played with us since then.
And what was this?
And Ilaria's written a lot of songs, and Aaron has written 2 songs. I wrote 1 song. So we have quite a few songs, a whole album worth of songs that we recorded that are original material.
Cool. And so when did did you guys kind of start working on an album when he came back, or is it in the making for a while?
We wanted to, but we ended up playing and practicing quite a bit before we got to that point. And then I like playing original material. One of the things that I love the most about playing in my punk rock band in college, I don't know if I told you the name of that band or not. It was NRG.
NRG?
Yeah. Since then, there's a renewable energy company down toward, south of here.
Yeah.
that now uses the name NRG, but we called ourselves NRG because if you say the letters fast, it sounds like the word energy. And we were all about putting out energy.
That's
And
cool.
it was the punk thing. And
I like
what
that.
was funny was they dressed up very punk-like. They wore dog collars and
Plaid.
torn up jeans and shirts and bandanas and long hair. And I just dressed in in a regular colored T-shirt, had my straight crew cut that I have today, only it was brown then instead of white. So I was the contrast for the band playing drums, and they looked all punked out.
Right. Sometimes that's more punk rock when you don't look.
Maybe.
Especially if you're playing a punk show. They're like, hey, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but we did a lot of original tunes in the NRG band. That was fun. And so when Ilaria started writing tunes, I decided it was worth us trying to get them arranged and make them band songs.
Cool.
So that was a lot of fun.
So you guys have one album, or is there another in the process?
We have one album that's been recorded professionally. I had one early on, just shortly after Ilaria joined the band when she was 16, 17 years old. But the recording quality of that wasn't all that great. And the musicianship of that time wasn't all that great in terms of the lead guitar player. So that is since different because shortly after Aaron joined the band, Bruce decided he didn't want to leave. He wanted to stay a few more years. So I said, okay, Aaron, you're not playing rhythm any longer. You're playing lead guitar. And he said, but I've never played lead guitar before. I said, I know that, but you can learn a song in 3 minutes. So don't tell me you can't listen to a lead and learn that 3 minutes too. And sure enough, you could listen to leads on a recording and within 3 minutes be picking out the same identical lead. So he became a lead guitar player.
Right on. You forced him into it. Well, yeah, if you've been playing guitar long enough, you know your stuff.
When you find these people that are super, super, super talented, it doesn't take a lot for them to switch gears.
Right, exactly. You can sense that they can pick it up easily. So, okay, so when did sorry?
I was going to say for a short while he played bass too, when we were having trouble finding bass players.
Some but
he can learn things pretty quickly.
So when did this album come out? Is it recent or?
I thought it was a couple of years ago, maybe 2017.
Cool.
2018.
Is it self-titled or I can't remember now. Probably looked at it.
It is. It's called. What is it called now? I should know this. I have the album, but it's downstairs. I meant to bring it so I could talk about it.
No worries. We can figure it out.
Yeah.
Let's see. Maybe is it on?
Standing on the Edge. We called the album "Standing on the Edge" after one of Ilaria's songs.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So, we sell it when we play out. It's out there on iTunes and different places. You can buy it off Amazon. We haven't really had any sales. One of the things that I'm not super good at is marketing and booking.
Yeah.
So that's the worst part. I mean, you obviously know all about it because with your one-man band stuff, you're constantly booking and marketing yourself.
I was, yes. Well, yeah, I got good at booking, just doing that. Well, a lot of it's email and all that stuff, but marketing I just learned in like the last year. Well, online and whatnot, like the right way to do it. But
yeah,
it's working great now that I am not playing out as much to, know what to do at this time, basically. But yeah, that's a whole other thing too. It's nowadays, especially everything digital, you can listen to everything. You got to really do something extra to get people to listen, or
Yeah.
or buy something. I mean, even if you wanted to stream it somewhere or whatever, but it's a lot of work goes into it. It's kind of crazy, but it's also frustrating as hell. But
Yeah. I'm sure. I know that it's really rough. You call people up and you tell them about your band or what you
yeah,
do, and you try to, you know, figure out what it is that they might like that you can offer and try to sell it to them. And then lately, like in 2019, there was just so many places kept saying, well, our people won't come out to bands, you know, like a lot of the legions and VFWs and things like that just don't seem to want to have much in the way of bands.
huh?
Uh, bar scene is a little rough because a lot of bars don't want country music.
Right.
So, we tried to change our angle a little bit and do only the modern crossover country and
Mm-hmm.
do groups that we really love a lot, like Little Big Town and Lady Antebellum, you know, stuff like that. The Dixie Chicks, we do some of their stuff,
Right on.
and then we started learning some of the pop stuff. So I ended up having a round electronic drum pad so I could get some of those clap sounds and things like that. It's in some of the more modern music,
Mm,
but
that's cool.
it's just really rough getting clubs to hire you, and then it's also rough keeping everybody's schedules in
Yeah.
gear so you don't have booking conflicts. The other thing I don't have is I don't have like some of the very successful bands I used to go and follow
Mm,
and go listen to. They would have substitute musicians on the side. So if somebody couldn't make it on a certain night, they just call up another musician and they would come
yeah.
in. So
Right.
I never got, you know, extra lead players or extra bass players or extra rhythm players or anything like that lined up that could come in if
Yeah.
somebody for some reason couldn't play a gig.
Right.
And I think that's really hard to keep a band going unless you can do something like that today because people's schedules are just so busy.
Yeah, and it's like you said, kind of like the bass player thing. A lot of people are playing in multiple bands, and
Mm-hmm.
then kind of pick and choose like which, well, which show pays better, which band they prefer more.
Right.
This crowd, that crowd, and that's it's funny. Right before all this quarantine stuff happened, it was like I was kind of getting like pretty sick of all the venues that just don't pay good and they kind of treat you like background music. You're just not like appreciated in a sense. And so now it's going to put things into perspective a little because I appreciate the ones that actually really welcome what you're doing. They like the original thing and all that stuff. So it's definitely a challenge, like finding where you fit in. And especially nowadays, it just seems like there's so much competition. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
So,
the night I met you, it felt like you were just background music to
and
the
I
audience
would,
that was there.
and
And
I've played there like once a month for 2 years. Like they keep booking me, they keep paying
yeah,
me, but
yeah,
it's just like if I'm not playing, like I guess what you were kind of just talking about, pop covers, then they're just like, what is he doing up there? He's stomping on something.
yeah.
I don't know.
That's why I said to you,
I've
is
done it for so long, like consistently. I just got sick of those
yeah.
type of gigs specifically. I'm just like, you know what? If things go back to normal, I don't think I'm going back to those
Yeah.
places. But
Well, you did a great job of just being into your music and playing, and whether they were listening or clapping or not. And I certainly was watching you and listening to what you were
appreciate it.
doing intently. And Gordy was running sound that day, and
Yeah,
not that he had to do too much if it's just one person that just set it and let you do your thing.
oh, it
But
sounded good. Yeah, you guys
yeah,
dialed it in good. No, I mean, and that's I guess it's I kind of turn into like a robot in that sense. When I get in those situations where you can feel it, like people just aren't giving you feedback in that good sort of way. I just kind of get into my own zone. You just try to filter it out, and then it's like vice versa. When you're actually playing for people who are into it, it's you're talking more, you're interacting more,
right.
you're looking at people more while you're playing, and it's just I don't know. I guess I didn't almost want to get to a point where I was picky, but at the same time, it's just like, why do I want to bring all that stuff and do all that multi whatever for people who don't care? It's just kind of like, but in a sense, a lot of times, gigs like that, I end up meeting people like you, like people who they appreciate it, or we have some other type of connection, down the line or what have you. So I guess there's always that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
I just like that what you did sounded like a full band, but it was one person playing. I mean, you were definitely keeping the bass drum going on your stomp box. You had the snare drum going with your left foot with the tambourine. You had the whole rhythm thing going with what you were doing on guitar. And then, of course, you do the vocals as well. So you had the whole spectrum of what a band is just pretty much covered all by yourself and what you're doing. And I just thought that was great.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, and it's almost like a stripped down, like the beat. It's almost like a basic beat compared to what you could do with the drum kit. But that's another thing too. It's like a lot of these places, they want to pay me the same as someone who just shows up with one guitar and just sings covers, and I'm like, what am I doing? Like what you just said. It sounds like a full band, and like you want to pay me the same as someone. I could just show up here with the guitar and you give me the same, but I don't want to just show up with the guitar. I don't like playing like that. With the full band, yeah, but it's just I don't know, man. And I guess you got to just stand up if you actually. It's kind of a gamble, but I'm trying to make more money online. I'm especially now, but I'm still playing gigs here and there, and I'm just doing the ones that are worth it, or ones that they'll let you, basically. So,
yeah.
But all right, so I was gonna ask you. So, the Maple Creek album came out 2017, roughly around there. So, like, how long were you playing some of these originals, like in the making, until were any of those on the original, home recordings, and then you brought them back to the studio, or was it like a 10-year writing thing? Or
so Ilaria started writing music very shortly after she got into the band. So there was a lot of high school and college type.
So was she
she was writing?
Was she mid-20s?
I always thought it'd be kind of cool to write a song, so I wrote a song called "Don't Tell Him He Can't Do That," and it's kind of a bluegrassy type sounding, fast tempo song where I'm basically the verses are the story that I've told you earlier about, playing drums and my own insecurity and fear about whether I would ever have, a girlfriend, wife, or family. And then there's a verse about a music teacher that told me I can't play drums because the sticks are too big for your hands. And then, of course, the chorus is, don't tell him he can't do that because you'll just end up eating your own hat, which is an old Vermonter phrase where I grew up with. That basically meant don't say something because you might, end up having to eat those words again or eat your hat.
Yeah, exactly.
And hat rhymed with that. So that was on the first album.
So how much longer, how old are some of the songs, basically what I'm saying? Because sometimes it's almost better to, like, you're playing them live all these years, some of them are, and then finally you get in the studio and you're just like extra ready to throw them down.
Well, mine had two different versions. There was the version that I did with the older musicians that were no longer in the Maple Creek that we did early on. And then when Aaron got into the band, and he was playing lead, he made each lead, because after each chorus there would be a lead, and then I'd do the verse and chorus and then another lead and then verse, chorus, and another lead. He made each and every lead distinctly different. The first time we ever did it, the lead was the same. It was the same lead all three times. But he is not one for, sticking to one thing and repeating it 3-4 times till it becomes boring. So he would change up the leads. Right. So he put a whole another level of excitement to the piece. And I think we changed the key on it. And instead of starting with a chorus, we now start with a verse and stuff like that when we play it.
So you're singing and playing this one? Or they're singing?
We play it when we play out.
No, I mean, are you singing? They're singing, not you, right?
No, I'm singing it.
You're singing and playing. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
I got the little.
Yeah, that was the other thing I learned how to do when I was in high school. Once I would learn how to play all the drum parts to an album that I was listening to, then I started trying to sing along while I was playing. So that's pretty tricky. You have to learn to sing and land the words on the beat with your feet and your hands.
Yeah, you gotta like stop thinking about the beat, basically. Just let it.
Yeah.
Hope it keeps going.
Yeah. So when I learn a song, I'm learning it the way to sing it rhythmically and how that rhythm goes with what I'm doing drumming wise.
So you think like Don Henley was a big inspiration of that? Anyone?
Yeah, for sure.
Or what's his name? Genesis, right? Phil Collins. You into him or not as much?
Probably not as much. I didn't know a lot of the musician names of the bands that I liked when I was growing up. I later started to learn what the drummer names were. Ironically, when I was much older and subscribed to the drumming magazine. And so I read that every month, and cool. I learn all different things about what drummers played in which bands that I used to love when I was growing up, but I didn't know their names at the time. And I never went out to concerts. I didn't hang out with any high school groups that would go to concerts and stuff. And if I went to concerts, it was with my parents, and those were always country concerts at a fair.
Right.
So as far as drum names, I never really got to know those musician names much at all until later in life when I would look them up. Like I learned that it was Ronnie Tutt that played the drums on that Aloha from Hawaii album. And Sean did.
Yeah.
You know, and Dave Grohl played drums with Nirvana.
And yeah. Well, what about, you got, Keith Moon, he was crazy.
Right, Keith Moon. But these are all names that I ended up learning as an adult within the last 10 years.
You just didn't care to read the credits or whatever. That's good. Yeah. You're into the music that much. You don't care. It doesn't matter.
Right. I was into just listening to the music, and it was all auditory, and I didn't really pay too much attention to lyrics. I've learned to start listening to lyrics more and understanding what a song is really about. But it was just listening to the rhythms of the drum and what the bass was doing, because a lot of what I do as a drummer relies on what the bass does too.
Yeah,
and a lot of what rhythms are being done with the guitar.
That's really interesting. It's just like it was sonically pleasing to your ear that you didn't. I mean, it's to each their own, like every musician appreciates music for their own reasons. You know what I mean? I've always been on the other end of the spectrum. I always listen to lyrics intently. Yeah. I mean, that's why I've been writing them for so long. But
yeah, for sure.
It's cool though that you still could be into the music that much, and then so you can almost recite a song, but not fully, even though you know how to play it, the drum part.
Yeah.
Stuff you grew up on and what have you. But
yeah, okay. I mean, a lot of the people that I became my favorites were like Charlie Pride, Merle Haggard, Mel Tillis, Loretta Lynn, Linda Ronstadt, Tanya Tucker, all those people.
Right on.
And then, of course, when I got into high school and discovered rock, then there were things like Elvis Presley, the Eagles, Styx was a favorite of mine, Kansas. I loved Kansas because it was like blending of classical music with rock.
Yeah.
And there were all these polyrhythms and things that were being done that I couldn't play, but I loved to listen to. And then Supertramp, and there was the 70s disco stuff that everybody kind of either hated or loved.
Yep.
And I was one of the ones that loved it, and I liked that hi-hat opening up on every beat or every other beat.
The beat is cool. I kind of like the funk more, but yeah, I mean, I can appreciate it.
Yeah. The one style of music I could never get myself to like was rap music.
Yeah.
And I didn't like grunge, And I didn't think I liked heavy metal until I started listening to some of the stuff that friends of mine had shared with me, like with Nirvana and
Well, that's more grunge, kind of.
is
Nirvana.
that grunge?
Yeah,
Okay.
Nirvana. They are grunge.
Oh, okay. What's the
But no,
one that the Foo Fighters? What's Foo Fighters considered?
they're kind of like, I don't know. That's almost like pop rock.
Okay.
Because by the
So
time I mean, it's like post grunge.
yeah, there's so many different style names now that I don't
Yeah,
really know what they all are.
you
But
like what you like.
yeah, funk. I liked funk, what I'd heard of it, and hip hop, some of it, and
Well, hip
then
hop, the drum beats a loop, so you're not getting much
right.
variation.
But recently, I got a better appreciation for some of that music, or maybe it's just because I think it was done better than some of the original artists. Is the musical Hamilton? The
Um,
music that's in Hamilton is just fantastic. The drumming in that is superb,
right on.
and there's a lot of raps, singing, talking going on through Hamilton.
Yeah.
It's the Broadway musical.
When they say that it's rap in a sense is like one of the oldest forms of like, because it's like chanting in a sense,
Yeah.
chanting, rhyming. So it's like, a sense that's why a lot of people rap. It's like people who know they can't sing, but they can rap. I mean, even though you have to rap in tune, well, they got auto
Well,
tune, but
it's so syncopated and rhythmic, but the lyrics is what really turned me off. For someone who didn't listen much to lyrics, whenever I would listen to
right.
the rap,
Well, and there's enough explicit stuff to turn
it
you on,
was
but it's
overly explicit and overly violent.
right, and you have to like pick, sift through it to find anything that's somewhat positive. Well, it depends on what it is, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
What's most popular typically
yeah,
is something violent. I don't know what that tells you about music,
yeah.
but whatever. All right, so cool. So anything else you want to put out there in the ether?
Uh, Not really. I mean, I am retired. I have been spending the last 2 years enjoying retirement.
Right
Uh,
on.
I do sound and lights, like you had mentioned earlier with Gordy, as a side thing.
What's the
I'm
name?
now
What's the
what?
company name? What's the sound?
We call ourselves. What do we call ourselves? Maple Creek Sound Solutions.
Oh, right on. So you're keeping the
Yeah,
Maple Creek going.
yeah, we kept the Maple Creek going for that.
Smart.
Um, so at this point, I'm just trying to be a freelance musician and talk to other musicians, find out if they're in need of drummers, and see if I can play with them.
Yeah.
I really want to. I'll be 60 next year. I'm 59 this year, and the handicapping condition that I have is called arthrogryposis, which I've had at birth. And it's just basically a stiffening of the joints and a lack of muscle development. So I don't have muscles that run my elbows, so I can't bend my elbows. They're loose to a certain extent, so I can whip them like you would a whip to be able to drum. And my finger dexterity is pretty limited, but enough that I can hold a pair of sticks and do drum rolls and stuff like that.
Right
But
on.
I do have arthritis, and eventually the arthritis
Ah,
will get me. But I've been told by doctors that the more I keep moving, the more I keep playing drums,
yeah.
the longer I will have the flexibility and be able to keep doing stuff like that. So now that I'm retired, I want to do more music.
Well, I mean, I guess that's what even they say with people who retire. You gotta keep active
Right.
to just keep yourself going. So I guess
Yeah.
it's the same idea with
Yeah.
that. Because
Well,
if you were to stop drumming for a while, it'd probably be that much more difficult when you picked it up again.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll find out in a little while when we get together to practice.
Yeah, we need to figure this. Should we? Is there any outdoor setting like
Well,
you think you're
at this point in time, nobody's living at my house in Westford, so the basement would be fine if it's just the four of us, and we
cool?
could set up the sound, just a small sound system with monitor type things, and your amps. Or if you've got some other place in mind, I can bring the drums there.
No, I mean, I'd rather come to you, especially, if you can get the drum set, set up more conveniently prior.
Yeah.
And if you guys are doing the sound and it's your drum set, then yeah, you guys could just have it set up, and so we could just conveniently show up.
Yeah.
Me and Nathan could even carpool.
Yeah.
We're always like looking to jam, and we're gonna do like a duo show in I think 2 weeks or something in upstate New York. But
Is that an outdoor one, the duo?
yeah, it's a private party. It's like on this lake, and I mean, if you guys could do that, they wanted a full band. I didn't know if it was too late to notice. It was August 2nd, but
August 2nd?
it's like 3 hours from me, or 3.5. So it's probably, you're closer, but
Oh,
I don't know. I told him for sure I could do the duo. Big maybe on the full band, but
well, if we wanted to try to have a practice before then you'd be able to judge for yourself whether you thought it would be worth trying to do it as the full band.
yeah, I mean, how quickly could we coordinate, or what's your schedule? It's pretty free.
It's pretty free. Yeah.
Well, so is it Gordon more? Like what night he could come?
Yeah, he likes to have Friday nights to do his work that he does. He delivers for the food services in grocery stores and stuff like that.
Yeah, you mentioned that.
Those apps that you can download and deliver people's groceries and food. So he makes a lot of money right now on weekends and stuff with that. But obviously the sound and light stuff and our music stuff takes precedence for him as well. So
right. Well, I'm sure
the best thing to do would be to get in touch with him to see if he could practice.
Cool. I'll send a group message, and
yeah,
we'll coordinate something, because I think Nathan's probably a little more free on the weekends, I would assume, but we're all more free in general, as we know. So
yeah,
we'll figure something out. Yeah, 'cause, I mean, that one's coming up quick, but even if we could get one or two before the August 23rd one, I think it'd be beneficial. But I'm confident it'd be cool. And
yeah,
I mean, you said you've been practicing to it from time to time.
I've been listening to it. I haven't yet gotten up to the house to actually play the drums to it since I've been
practicing.
Yeah, mentally I've been practicing and listening. I really love what your drummer on the album did. So there's a song.
Well, he was a studio drummer, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he did some really neat things that are not hard to do on the tom-toms that are so effective in that one song. I forget what it's called. That's the other thing. We got to learn.
Oh, naturally?
It might be, but there's this nice little syncopated tom thing.
It's going with the guitar back and forth, kind of.
Yeah.
No, I really liked what he did.
He did a lot of neat stuff. So that makes me happy because it gives me a framework on a couple of those songs to be able to emulate it, make it sound like you're used to for the studio album.
Yeah, well, and the other ones that aren't, well, I mean, it's home. Well, I recorded him in a studio. It's just a different drummer. He's a little more looser, as you can tell. He was more of a jazz player in high school and a punk player, but actually with him, I end up like copying and pasting and looping certain parts because he just almost gets like too crazy in certain.
Really?
I'm like, let's just make this chorus sound like this chorus, because we don't have to.
So a lot of that was you copying and pasting and putting the structure then.
I mean, not. Well, I have him do multiple takes, so it's kind of like if it's a lot of times it'll just be like one little part. I'm like, you got a little too crazy there. Let's just change that fill, or let's replace, like I said, a verse section, chorus section. So
right.
But I mean, you can tell the difference clearly in their playing,
Yeah. So that's one of the things that I also learned really early on as a drummer was that some drummers will get very bored playing a groove without getting flashy and fancy in the middle of it. And so there was a while I did not play with that country band in college. And I was let go for a short period of time over a controversy with a chair that was thrown at my girlfriend, and I went to the owner and said, please don't throw chairs at her any longer, something like that. He got mad at me and went and talked to the band leader, who decided she didn't want any conflict, so I was fired. And then for 2 years, they continued to play without me with various drummers. And those drummers did not like playing country. They didn't like just keeping the steady beat and stuff. And so she went back to my mother and said, do you think Dennis will come back to our band? And my mother said, well, I think he might, but why don't you ask him instead of me?
So you're saying kind of like you can appreciate in your playing, you almost like that rhythm,
I do. I mean, I like to,
the pattern.
right. I am more of a groove player than I am a fill player. And I
I love
really
that.
believe that fills are meant for letting the audience or the listener know that we're going to a new section of the song, like to a chorus or to a lead.
Right.
And in the middle of a verse, you don't start throwing some fancy 4-beat fill
Right.
that leads to nowhere but the same verse. I mean, it's just disruptive.
And especially, yeah, especially relative to the song style. Is it mellow? Is it whatever? Is it hyper? And even like a rowdy song, it like you said, it doesn't have to be until certain parts of the song, And I think it's well, that's what accompaniment all about, right? It's more accompanying instead of just straight. It's almost like they're trying to show their skills throughout the song instead of making the song better.
Yeah, drummers like to refer to that as the chops. They like to show off their chops.
It's like, well, what's best for the song or what's best for the recording?
Right. And when you talk to or you read these drummer magazine articles from some of the world famous drummers of big bands, they all say that they're playing for the song. They're not playing to show off their chops.
Right.
But young, inexperienced drummers think it's more fun to show off with the chops, even if it destroys a song. And that's what was happening with this country band. And eventually I got asked back because I played the music true to the real music.
Well, see, I think that's cool. I think, we'll probably, it'll work out good, And because in a sense, then like Nathan's the only true kind of improvising because he's the lead guitar player. Right. But even him, he comes back. I mean, he's probably rusty now, but after playing together for so long as a duo, he always just keep coming back to these licks of the same song. It just kind of naturally, thought about it or not, and it just it's what works, what's best for the song, and people forget that, and maybe that's a sense of they don't appreciate the song in the first place to even
that
give
could
it
be
that. And it's like, I mean, the guy I've been playing with, I've honestly been playing with for like a decade. And we were like punks in high school. And so it was a lot of that more rowdy stuff. But I guess he just never grew out of it. Or that's what he associates drums with. He almost doesn't associate drums with something simple. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which is interesting. I like you're on the other side of the spectrum here. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And
well, I like to have I like to use a certain groove for the verse, and then I like to embellish it a little bit for the chorus.
Yeah, totally.
And then I learned that from studying the country music from the 70s. Like they would be the boom cha going on in the verse. Then in the chorus it'd be boom cha boom boom cha. Boom,
boom, I love that.
And then they would go back to the regular boom cha without the extra and note in there for the verse. Mm-hmm. And then I noticed that the leads would also put the extra bass drum beat in there. And it was very driving. It gave the music energy and it sent it someplace. And then you quiet back down for the verse so that the singer gets the main attention during the verses.
Well, it makes the listener focus on, that part of the song or the lyrics, the melody, the vocal melody, whatever is best, for the song at that point. But
and I think the most effective, most wonderful, simple drum fill I ever heard was on an album called Drive by
Um.
Alan Jackson. So
hmm.
Alan Jackson did an album with a song on it called Drive, and it was about him driving his power motorboat that his father, had. It was all made of wood and so on.
Huh.
And Alan Jackson's drummer um, does nothing but a simple and four on the rack tom at the end of a chorus when he goes back into the verse. And he doesn't hit the crash cymbal on beat one. So he's got the crash cymbal and the heavy bass drum completely off from beat one when Alan goes back into singing a verse. And he just ends it with an and four leading into it. It's so simple, so easy, and so effective on the songs. And he does that throughout that Drive album.
See, that's sort of like the Pink Floyd drummer. He was like, he could do the slow stuff so rhythmically, you know what I mean? But
mm-hmm.
I guess that's pretty different from Alan Jackson.
Well, yeah, but
I was gonna say sometimes
kind of
it's the beats you don't play are equally as important, or if not more important, than the beats you do play. When to not hit it, even though it almost feels like, even the listener, it feels like you should hit it.
Yeah.
You expect it, but then it makes it better without it.
Yeah, someone else could do a 3 and 4 and type thing to come out of that chorus into the verse, but this drummer just chose a simple and four. And there was silence. There was no and after the four, but it was so effective on the majority of those songs for the style of music that Alan Jackson was singing. So it's that kind of thing that I love to listen to and pick up and incorporate into my own drumming.
Now, is that 90s country sound? It almost had that hollow.
Yeah, it's also the album he did that song about, after 9/11 when the towers came down.
Oh, that's a little later. I was thinking more.
It was in the 2000s, this album, the Drive one, somewhere in the 2000s.
Probably not familiar. All right.
Yeah,
like I said, it's all relative to the song and what works best for it. And, every drummer will play it differently, but.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I'm not that picky on that. I guess when it comes down to the studio version, you start to kind of really take apart the song and really what you want for it. But
those songs,
I like the idea of it kind of being slightly different.
Yeah. Those songs definitely have an orchestrated sound to them, though. Like, you definitely intended a certain rhythm to happen in the verse and something slightly different in the chorus. And then when you went back to the verse, that same theme and rhythm was going along again in the verse.
Totally.
And that's the kind of music that I really like doing, as opposed to music where every verse is totally different or every chorus is totally different.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I think that's almost just reserved for certain type of live things. Your jam band or your jazz or what have you. Most music is not like that. I mean,
right, it's not.
What you listen.
Most good music has structure.
And maybe it's simple, but whatever. That simplicity can, make it more musically pleasing in a sense. But I don't know. Some of the best songs are the most simple ones.
Right.
Well, I think we covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
Appreciate you being on the podcast, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. I think it's a great project.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'll definitely make a Maple Creek clip. Get some of your stuff. If you can send me any links to any songs you prefer or good live performances,
yeah,
that always helps.
Did I end up giving you one of the albums or not?
I don't think so. I just got your card. Yeah, I didn't actually get the album, but yeah, we'll.
If you want to text me your address, I'll send you the record, the album CD. If you want to use music off that, you can. That LCA TV.
Well, even. Oh, okay. Yeah, I looked at that after you told me.
Yeah, if you pull that up and watch that, you can actually see me doing drumming. If you want to do video clips of my drumming, I don't know how you get permission to do any of that, but you would know that.
I don't really. So it's all kind of based on,
I think all you'd have to do is just ask Rachel Hamilton, or I could email her and say, hey, can we use some clips from that for an interview?
Yeah. Well, at this point, it's almost like, I think it's like almost legal because like they can like monetize, like as long as maybe they have to okay it, but I've seen a lot of instances where it just like goes through because they can still get their view off of it somehow, even though it's on a different video.
Yeah, and I have no idea. I know that my wife is a novelist and a writer, and everything she does, if she uses anybody's photos in a book or she uses anything like that, she absolutely has to protect herself by getting written permission for the use of the material, so she can't later be sued. If a book makes $3 million and someone's pictures in it, they might want
Exactly.
that money.
Well, and maybe that's when this podcast gets 100,000 views. That's when.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have enough views yet on some of those for you to worry about making money off it. I don't think that's the point right now in making these, is to make much money.
I like it, man. I mean, it's kind of like, this is the type of stuff, like musicians I love, bands, whatever, artists. I'm always like geeking out and looking up their history, how the band started, so it's almost like I'm doing this with, just people I already know or people like you I've just met. And
right.
It started out more people who've been in bands with me, but I just slowly started expanding and whatnot. So I like it. It's fun. I mean, it's more work or whatever, but it's another way to represent myself and
more
content. Sure. But water. Again, I appreciate you being on.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Let's coordinate a practice sometime in the near future and make this happen. And I was gonna say, I'm still catching up on editing all these old ones. So you're number 28, and I have to release like 18 soon. So it might be a while to this premieres.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
And that's what I was gonna say too. You could just give me the CD when we practice, so you don't have to worry about mailing.
Oh, I'll just
bring it home with me, rip it on my computer, and all that stuff. But I like to get it. I
get
it prepped before I edit.
The other thing we could do is maybe set up a video camera when we play these outside things, and you can get some shots of me drumming then.
Oh, definitely. I always bring my cameras for sure.
When I'm playing music, that type of stuff. So, yeah. No, I knew you weren't going to be putting this out immediately. Either that or you're a miracle worker.
I mean, I tried to catch up, and I did put a decent amount of new ones out, but it's still just like, I don't know. I'm doing so much other stuff, and I always come back to my own, like, working on music, because that's what I really get into and whatnot. But
yeah, well, I watched a few of them. Your first one with Nathan is so different than the others that you're having to do with Zoom.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, and that was the funny thing. I started because I was already familiar with the Zoom app, and I just started reaching out because I used to live in Wisconsin, so I know a ton of like old band members and people I grew up with there. So it just seems like, oh, this is a way to get more episodes. Let's start using Zoom and record it this way. And then 2 months later, that was in January. 2 months later, oh, now everyone uses Zoom. Now every TV show is Zoom. Now it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
And I haven't had a normal one since. Nathan's the only one who's been in the same room with me. So.
Oh, well, I watched his, and then I watched the other 3 you sent me, which were the video excerpts. But then I went and found the full episodes so I could start watching the full episodes.
Oh yeah, the playlist is right on the YouTube channel. You can go in order if you want. Yeah. Or maybe it's backwards. Maybe it starts at the most recent. But
it starts with the most recent and goes backwards.
Some aren't as interesting, but they're all.
Yeah.
They all have their things.
Yeah, but I mean, I find them interesting because it's neat to hear different perspectives on music. And certainly Nathan's life was really interesting about how there was a time period he wasn't doing anything in music, and then he got back into it.
Well, and he got so good at like honing his craft, and
Yeah. And I knew Nathan before I even knew he was playing with you through his YouTube, not
Right.
YouTube, but through his Facebook stuff, because he was putting out a blues piece
Yeah.
every week that he'd been working on. And I used to listen to those and watch him do the finger picking on the guitar when he played the blues songs.
That's cool. Now you're going to play with him.
Yeah, I think it's very, very neat to be able to do that.
And he's a really cool guy, man. He's really laid back. And
Yeah.
And have no issues with performing with him thus far.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I think you'll be happy with I think you're going to be happy with the results of the four of us because.
Well, I've never heard Gordon play either. I'm confident he can play some bass.
Yeah, he can play the bass just fine, and I can do those blues rhythms either as steady 4 on the floor, or I can do the 6/8 boom 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 boom, that type of stuff. It can get as wild and crazy or as calm and peaceful as you want it.
Well, and that's the thing. I'm gonna probably get a more actual set list. Probably pick 18 songs, maybe 17 or something. 2 hours.
Yeah. You've given us about 19 already that I have.
Well, I'm gonna go through and pick and choose those. But what I was gonna say is that I like to definitely. I never like to do the same rhythm twice in a row. So we'll start on something that's in the middle. Then you're doing the fast stuff. Then you go to a ballad.
Right.
And, just try to keep. I don't like doing that live. Because you could do that blues. You could do that all night and people will have fun, but I won't do that every song. But,
no, you don't do it every song. But
and I like throwing the soft ones at the end too.
Yeah. And some of yours, even though they've got a bluesy quality to them, they wouldn't sound right doing the boom, 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 boom pattern.
Oh, no.
Because they've got a bluesy feel to them, but the way you're playing them also has kind of like a steady 8th note feel sometimes. And you've got you've got your foot stomping on the quarter note beat.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff you do as the one-man band, even though it's bluesy sounding, and it all works. It's neat. It's like a mixture of styles into there for your songs.
I think it's more like blues rock, or I don't even know what you call it.
Yeah.
When blues is such a loose term, because some people think of the big band. I always thought of the Robert Johnson, one guy and a guitar. That's what I think of blues. Other people think of Chicago blues, the blues.
Well, I was thinking of stuff like the Muddy Waters.
And that's kind of in between those.
Harmonica type stuff.
Half electric, half kind of stripped down, as compared to, like the Blues Brothers. That's when it's like big band, horn section. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. Sometimes it has a little Southern rock flavor to it.
That's definitely what I try to go for sure, too. But some soulful stuff. But well, cool, man. Yeah, that's I'm trying to have fun, and that's the whole thing. I feel like I'm like almost holding off on some other new stuff because I want to like get this stuff good first and then see what happens and all that stuff. But I think it'll be fun. I'm confident this will be a good show and we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
But great talking to you, man.
Nice talking to you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good night.
Peace, man.
Bye.